What a weekend for the University of Utah football team. We got visits after visits, and of course, with those, you get some monster commits. Several of them we got to be breaking down. And we also have to touch on the fact that the Big 12 is thinking about selling their conference naming rights. What? All that and more on today's Locked On Utes.
You are Locked On Utes, your daily podcast on the Utah Utes. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Hello, everyone, and thank you for making Locked On Utes your first listen every single day. We are available on all platforms, including YouTube and wherever you may get your podcast. If this is your first time listening to our show, make sure you like and subscribe. Love interacting with all of you in YouTube comments as well as on social media, where you can follow our show at Locked On Utes on X today. And today's episode of Locked On Utes is brought to you by LinkedIn Jobs. These days, every new potential hire can feel like a high-stakes wager for your small business. That's why LinkedIn Jobs helps you find the right people for your team faster and for free. You can post your job for free at linkedin.com/lockedoncollege. It's all caps, no spaces. Terms apply and conditions apply as well. My name is JT Wistricll, former intern inside the University of Utah Athletic Department. Excited to be breaking down all the latest in recruiting news, the Big 12 changing their name, the significance of having 2 5-stars on campus today. A little bit of a throwback show because we are in the old setting that I had where I used to host this show at too. And it's kind of fitting, right? Because today was a throwback to the 23 recruiting class that Utah brought in, right? That game-changing recruiting class, one of the best actually in program history that Utah was ever to bring in. The class of 2024, they didn't focus on recruiting as much. You only had 2 4-stars coming in, a lot of quality 3-stars, but the amount of gets they were able to land this past weekend felt like a game-changing class for this University of Utah football team. And that's what we're going to be talking about right now. We're just going to be going through all the commits. Look, usually when I talk about these guys, we do a full breakdown into their game. Utah had 4 commitments this past week. So we're going to be able to touch on these guys just briefly, and then in later shows, we'll do breakdowns on their game because we have to talk into the guys that Utah landed as well as some of the major players that visited this program. But let's talk about the biggest get of the weekend for Utah, and that was officially landing Christian Thatcher, the 2025 linebacker. He actually put out earlier this week, Leighton Roberts, who does a great job covering recruiting, tweeted out that Thatcher was going to be announcing his commitment June 16th at 5 p.m., and he narrowed us down his schools to USC, Washington. So that's 2 Big Ten schools. You got an SEC school in there with Oklahoma now. Still feels weird to say that. Kansas, Colorado, and Utah. So the Las Vegas native had to decide where he was going to be taking his services to. And thankfully for the University of Utah, they were able to land him. This is one of the best linebackers in the country, hence that 4-star designation, 6'2", 205 pounds, and just an absolute game wrecker. A guy who flies all over the field making plays, and I cannot wait to see what Thatcher can do once he gets up to Rice-Eccles Stadium. This is a guy who has all the tools and potential to me to be a multi-year starter for this Utah team. He'll have a shot to be a 3-year starter. Always tough to say that, but we just saw Lander Barton be able to do that. I don't want to put that expectation on him just because he's a 4-star linebacker, right? Doesn't make him Lander Barton, obviously. But when you just watch him, you go, okay, this is a guy who has a chance to be a 3-year starter at Utah. This is a great get for Utah, and I'm excited to talk about Thatcher's game even more. But love seeing Utah beat USC in another way, this time being recruiting than actually on the field. Utah also got a local commit as they picked up Carson Kafusi, who plays locally at Skyline High School. This is a defensive end, 6'6", 265. An impressive athlete. Got good hands, good size for the position, and I'm excited to see what this guy can do at the University of Utah too, because you're talking about a defensive lineman who has that wingspan and just another guy, right? Like you look at the athletic measurements. I mean, you can literally just head over to his Twitter bio, 4.9 40-yard dash. To be able to do that at 265 pounds, speaks to what a special athlete Kaufusi is. So I'm really excited to see what we see Coach Powell and Coach Ellis do when they get their hands on him, continue to help him grow and develop his game. And I think this is another really strong commitment for the University of Utah to land. Is they might lose Junior Tafuna and Van Fillinger after this year, maybe even like Samote Pepa, Licky Vaimahi, Connor O'Toole. Even though he's been a defensive end forever, these guys have all been around for a while. So it's nice to retool and get younger at this position a little bit with a guy the talent level of Kaufusi. And let's keep it going with another commitment that Utah's got. Like I said, we got 4 of them to talk about without even touching on the visits. Utah also got Drew Clements to come in, 6'4", 215 pounds. Clements is a guy who is an elite tight end. And if you're an elite tight end, where do you want to play football at? More than likely, the University of Utah. And that's what Clements is going to have the opportunity to do, coming into one of the best offenses that maximizes tight end production over the past few years in college football. Makes a lot of sense why Clemens was appealing to Utah. That 6'4.5" length I absolutely love, right? Being able to go up over top, high point the passes because you have those long arms, the concentration, all things that Clemens possesses, and I think will do at a high level with this Utah football team. Also like that 215 pounds, right? Strong enough to be able to move guys, but it's not going to slow you down. This is another guy that once he gets in, Coach Fred Whittingham Jr. gets his hands on him, kind of mold and help him grow into the player that has the potential to be an elite tight end for the University of Utah. And there are a lot of tight ends that this Utah team will continue to bring in that are going to be competing for these spots. But Clemens is a guy I think that has a legitimate shot. So love that Utah was able to add his services. And as for one last commitment, Utah was also able to add Maximo Fini Moana. I apologize if I mispronounced that name too. He's a 3-star linebacker / edge, 6'3", 225 pounds. Just another guy who plays hard every snap too, who's going to come in, work day one, do everything he can to try to put himself in the position to get onto the field. And this is the kind of commit when you get a guy like Maximum. I think it just rounds out the recruiting for the day overall or the weekend overall. When you land 4 players of this caliber, like where I think Maximum is a guy who can come in and make impact plays for this Utah team because of the speed he offers off the edge or the surefire tackling if they think of him more as an inside linebacker. So excited to see where the coaches feel like his services will best be utilized to, but felt like this is just another guy with game-changing potential that the University of Utah was able to have. So these are 4 recruits, and all of them 3 or 4 stars. Obviously, Thatcher, the only 4-star. But how did Utah beat all those schools that always get the 4 and 5 stars? It was with a couple of 4-stars sprinkled in, and mostly with the 3-star guys they bring in that fit their system, and then they develop and help them grow into the best player that they can be. That's something that really excites me, and I think this was a huge weekend for the University of Utah recruiting in terms of the commits. And that's without even mentioning Utah had so many visits on campus. They had tons of guys up there to get experience. 2 of those guys being Jerome Miles, a 5-star receiver, used to be committed to Utah sneakily. No one really knew about it. Then he's actually now committed to Ole Miss, but still want to take his Utah visit. And then you get another guy in Iosi Epinesa, the younger brother of NFL defensive end AJ Epinesa, 5-star defensive end, who also is ranked the 15th overall player nationally in the class of 25, the 3rd best defensive lineman, also visited the University of Utah this past weekend. You have 2 5-stars on campus. We're going to talk about the significance of that at the end of the show, but love that it seems like Utah made a strong impression on 2 of the best players at their position in the class of 2025. So much talent on campus, such a great opportunity for the University of Utah to give off a great impression of their brand, the success, their ability to develop talent, help those guys reach their NFL goals as well as winning on the collegiate level. This is you can't win a weekend more outside of the football season to me than what Utah did, making strong impressions on some of the best players in the country and signing several elite recruits. I'm so excited to track the continued progress of Utah recruiting. I think this is a fantastic weekend for them. And man, we're only scratching the surface breaking down all these guys' games because we weren't really even able to break them down, just able to give little thoughts on each of them because we had so many to try to get through. Felt like I had a producer in my ear and it was my own voice in my head saying, all right, got to move into this guy so we can get an ad break in here shortly. And we do have to get an ad break in, but I'm sorry. I'm sure a lot of you would love for me to continue to talk about some other of the recruiting news and everything there. I don't get fired up often on this show, but this whole Big 12 thing, it got to me and I can't help myself. I'm sorry. I have to talk about this today. So I'm going to give my reaction, which is still, I just can't believe we have to talk about that. This is a sentence that the Big 12 is considering changing their name Like, we're going to talk about what that means for Utah and how just insane that possibility is in one moment. But first, I want to talk with you all about one of the sponsors of today's episode of Locked On Utes, our friends at LinkedIn Talent Solutions. When you're hiring for your small business, you want to find quality professionals that are right for the role. That's why you have to check out LinkedIn Jobs. LinkedIn Jobs has the tools to help you find the right professionals for your team faster and for free. LinkedIn isn't just another job board. They help you hire professionals that you can't find anywhere else, even those who aren't actively searching for a new job but might be open to the perfect role in a given month. Over 70% of LinkedIn users don't visit other leading job sites. So if you're not looking on LinkedIn, you're looking in the wrong place. On LinkedIn, 86% of small businesses get a qualified candidate within 24 hours. You can truly hire professionals like a professional on LinkedIn. LinkedIn knows that small businesses are wearing so many hats and might not have the time or resources to hire. That's why LinkedIn is constantly finding ways to make the process easier. They even just launched a feature that helps you write job descriptions, making the process that much quicker and easier. 2.5 million small businesses use LinkedIn for hiring. So you can join the fray today by posting your job for free at linkedin.com/lockedoncollege. That's linkedin.com/lockedoncollege. Post your job for free. Terms and conditions do apply. All righty, let's continue to talk about some crazy news that happened towards the end of last week / just recent college football news, right? And I will be closing on another recruiting thing in a moment, but I have to talk about this. I cannot believe this is a thing. Let's talk about the fact that the Big 12, Utah's newest conference, is seriously considering selling their naming rights. Let's go to Pete Thamel, one of the top voices in reporting in the college football world, featured at ESPN and College Game Day. Sources, and this comes to his X account. The Big 12 is exploring selling its naming rights to a title sponsor, with the potential revenue being hundreds of millions over the course of the deal. Now, that is very important and interesting. It would be the largest commercial deals. It would be one of the largest, commercial deals in collegiate athletics history, not including media rights. So just in general, that's insane. The conference has had in-depth discussion about this, and a decision is expected in the upcoming months. Again, this is Thamel's X account where you can find all this. The commercial sponsor would potentially take the big out of the Big 12 and replace it with the sponsor's name. The conference has been exploring the option for the past 6 months as a creative way to generate revenue, which could mean multiple millions of dollars for individual schools annually. And when there is 16 schools to split that up amongst, I am very curious to see how the final dollar sign of all of that would end up shaking out. And I've heard Allstate as a rumor. I forget who reported that, but there were rumors that Allstate was one of the main leaders in the clubhouse. So what do I think about Utah potentially playing in the Allstate 12? To be completely honest with you, I don't like to use this word on my show. I don't really hate many things. I absolutely hate it. I think this is absolutely horrible for college football. I don't like it at all. And as I said, I truly hate it. College sport is the best to me because it's about tradition. And moves like this are just the stuff that makes the sport even more unrecognizable. There's supposed to be pride when you talk about your school, even the conference a little bit, right? Like, having left the Pac-12, we became defenders of the Pac-12 a little bit. Heck, we still are. I have to defend about how Utah can actually play a physical brand of football because the Pac-12's reputation was not playing a physical style of football. In some cases, that was true. And in some years, the Pac-12 being down was true. And then there were years like last year where they were actually really good, but people just let the history of some of the down years of the Pac-12 be like, well, how good was the conference really? And completely ignored the success that a Washington and Oregon had and so many other teams from the conference. So this is where I get frustrated by all of the noise in that. But anyways, like, just playing, I took pride in playing in the Pac-12. I didn't take pride. I didn't suit up once, but I just got excited to talk about, playing in the Pac-12, competing and being a member of Pac-12 school. And I was excited to be a Big 12 school. I'm still excited to be a member of the Big 12, despite what the reaction of a lot of Utah fans and some of the frustrations there and it being bigger than yada, yada, all that, whatever it is. I'm excited to join the Big 12. Because the Big 12 is a conference that has strong tradition. And tradition is what college football is all about. I know there's a ton of people that get frustrated with the name, image, and likeness stuff. And of course, like, we live in a world where that's not trickled into recruiting and it's become a mess and we're trying to regulate it and all those kind of things, like the Jaden Rashada thing that's going on. But at the end of the day, I always appreciate, and I think it's the right thing, that players are being compensated and have the opportunity to earn NIL. Once again, it's out of control. But like, if For the Madden cover athletes, those guys earned the opportunity to be on the cover of that. I've always believed they deserve the opportunity to make money and profit off that. Same thing for Cam Rising. He's earned the opportunity to get the NIL deals. He's experienced unparalleled success at this university, deserves the opportunity to cash in on that. So I'm a fan of some of what NIL can do, but I am not at all a fan of completely selling, in some ways, your soul. I mean, the name of your conference is in many ways your soul. And in order to make $1, you're willing to sell that. And now that's what Utah is a part of. I don't like that. And I understand that, like, if we're talking about the positives, mean multiple millions of dollars for individual big schools annually, as it says in there, if that money is distributed to Utah, that helps them in the NIL arms race as they're trying to compete against Big Ten and SEC schools for top recruits, because it's adding to their NIL war chest and just helping them upgrade their facilities or whatever they want to use that $2 million for. Like, that is a benefit, getting that amount of money. But is it worth it to say, oh, we play in the All-State 12? And once again, why in the world are they keeping the number 12? Just call it the All-State 16, call it the All-State Conference. I don't care. When you're going to change it, why in the world would you keep 12 when you do not have 12 schools anymore? That number is now changed. So it's the stuff like that I just think is just crazy. I just don't understand. I mean, I understand we're trying to make money, but I just can't fathom saying my school plays in the All-State Conference. That just seems wrong and seems weird, because then the most important thing is the dollar figure. And I know it has to be in some ways. Like, it's all about making money, college sports, college football, things of that in the end of the day. But like, we love supporting it. We love the sport because it's an escape in many ways from, reality, all the things like that too. And just like, we love our teams. That's why we tune into this as well. And now we play in a conference where even the name is paid for. It's just a step too far for me. I don't like it at all. And I think it's really disappointing that they would be willing to change the name of the conference to continue to make money. And I know it's trying to do everything to stay with the Big Ten, the SEC, but at what cost when you're willing to even sell your name? I just think that's a bad look. I just think that it's just, once again, I don't like that. I just think that you should want to hold on. The name is something we play in the Big 12. That's supposed to mean something. Well, how much does it mean if you're willing to sell the name? Like, there's supposed to be pride in your name. Like, it's not supposed to be something that's for sale, in my opinion, when you're talking about brands and things of that nature. I don't like it. And I understand trying to do everything we can to make money and compete with the top dogs and all that. But I just think there has to be a line that you don't cross. And I've already crossed it in a number of ways in terms of, like, I understand the changes to NIL, and I once again support all the athletes getting the opportunity to earn that money. But I just think the conference changing its name to whatever sponsor is just so far. It's just another step of so far away from what makes college football so great and why we love it. And just seeing the dollar be that important that we would become the All-State Conference rather than the Big 12. Like, saying the Big 12, that means something, the tradition, the history. The All-State Conference means a dollar figure. And we come in because we want to support our teams and watch them go on to win the Big 12, not because we want to watch the All-State Conference and we're just willing to do whatever it takes for the dollar. I just think that sets a horrible precedent, and I don't like it at all. So, yeah, that's how I feel about the Big 12 naming thing. I'd love to hear from you guys, as well as on the recruiting stuff, right? Like, what do you think of the recruits Utah is adding, the commits? We're going to talk about the 2 5-stars that visited Utah a little bit more in a moment. But also, what do you think of this whole Big 12 naming rights fiasco? I'm curious about your guys' thoughts there. So that's how I feel about that. But I do want to touch on the fact that Utah had a significant recruiting milestone this past weekend. We are going to be touching on that in one moment. But first, I want to discuss with you all our great friends at FanDuel Sportsbook. Summertime means baseball, the NBA Finals, and more, and you can bet on it all at FanDuel. Right now, new customers get $200 in bonus bets with any winning $5 bet. That's $200 you can use to bet on everything from the Finals MVP to who's going to hit one out of the park. You can visit FanDuel.com/lockedon and add a big win to your summer bucket list. The NBA Finals, let's talk about that. A little more interesting now that Dallas has won a game, and I've never bought the Boston Celtics in terms of they are clearly the best team in the NBA and going to win a championship. In terms of just like they have a ton of just closers on their team. So would we really be surprised to see them let another slip through their fingers since they don't have that guy who takes over every single game? Like, you're not going to come back because they got this guy out there. That's not what we say about the Celtics. So does that mean Dallas can come back and win? Who's going to play well for Dallas? Or does Boston get great performances from some of their key players like a Jason Tatum, Jaylen Brown, Drew Holiday? Maybe he'll have another big game. Maybe Porzingis will play. There are so many fun, fascinating angles, and you can bet on them all today by visiting FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Alrighty, let's close out today's show talking about the significance of 2 5-star recruits, because once again, as I mentioned, Jerome Miles, who was ranked the 31st player nationally, the 5th best wide receiver, and #1 in the state of Utah, visited Utah, even though he's committed to Ole Miss currently. But they also had another visit on campus, and that was Iosi Epinesa, who's the 15th best player nationally, the 3rd best defensive lineman top player in the state of Illinois. And someone tweeted out something very interesting. Biased Ute tweeted out, had Utah ever had 2 5-star players visit in the same weekend before? And from Steve Bartle, who is the site manager and editor for Ute Zone, and who's come on the show before, said they have not. So that means Utah made history this weekend. They had 2 5-stars on campus visiting, made sure that they were interested in Utah's campus. And I just think that's absolutely phenomenal. The growth of the Utah brand is something we've talked about a lot on this show. And I think this is just another step in the growth of that Utah brand. The fact that you have 2 5-stars on campus in the same weekend. There are only a handful of players this past weekend, because June is a massive recruiting month, obviously. There's only a handful of schools that can share that same thing. They had multiple 5-stars on campus looking at it, visiting, and considering to join their program. Because 5-stars are very rare. There's a reason Utah has never landed one, right? Like, it's a very exclusive club. And the fact that Utah is in position to land some 5-stars potentially is big. And I do believe they have a chance at these guys, right? You look at Utah's had a lot of success recruiting some defensive linemen. So Epinesa could look at it like, hey, I could come in, I could produce on a winning team, get my skills developed, have a chance to the NFL, and win at college. That makes a lot of sense. Jerome Miles, if he walked in and he's a 5-star, he'll have a chance to play right away, just like a 4-star wide receiver Mikey Matthews did. And who would Miles be playing with potentially if he came to Utah right away in 2025? That would be his former high school quarterback he just won a state championship with in Isaac Wilson. I believe Utah has a legit shot at Wilson. I mean, well, they obviously do. They got Wilson. I believe Utah has a legit shot at Miles. Miles, that chemistry, I think, is a real thing. And because he's in the state of Utah, I think that obviously also boosts the recruiting chances too. He's known about this program. And it's tough if you're a receiver, right, in the past to come play for this Utah team. But I think we're going to see a changing of the guard a little bit. I think look at some of the receivers that Cam Rising has at his disposal. This offense's desire to become more of a passing attack. You have to in some ways in the Big 12, kind of because of how these teams air it out in high-scoring offenses. And Utah's defense will hold them down, but I still think you just got to be a dynamic offense. And I think Utah's ready to be that with Cam Rising this year, making it more enticing for receivers. I think Utah's got a legit shot at both these guys, and I'll just go back to this. This speaks to the continued evolution and growth of the Utah football brand, right? They have continued to win on some of the biggest stages, back-to-back conference champions in 21 and 22. They get bowl eligible constantly. Do they always perform great in the bowl game? No, but that's a lot because of opt-outs and other factors outside of that too. So diving back into this Utah team, though, the fact that you have 2 5-stars on campus is people recognizing how good this Utah team is, how well they can develop their sons in the case of parents, how well for the players they can win right away and have an opportunity to hear their name called in the NFL. All of that is incredibly important to these guys, and you can do it at Utah. That's why 2 5-stars have a lot of interest in joining and being part of this Utah football program because of the incredible success they have and are going to be continued to set up to have because of the recruits they've landed that we talked about in the first segment and because of the potential they have to guys to land 5-stars. Utah's landing a 5-star soon. I don't know if it's either of these two guys, but it's coming because of how well this team has done, how well they recruit, their vision, the family, the culture, all those things so important to recruits, and it's going to happen. Utah will land a 5-star soon, and I can't wait to break it down on Locked On Utes. Because whether Utah plays in the All-State Conference or not, I'm still going to be here fired up talking about Utah football, and I hope you'll continue to join me Monday through Friday. We'll be back on tomorrow's show to break down more of the news that came out recently, as well as react to and talk about just some of the wild and craziest things. I want to talk about recruiting, how much recruiting matters amidst all the success that Utah is having? That'll be a discussion we'll have on tomorrow's show. We look forward to seeing you all then. Hope you have a great Monday.